Hi everybody, it's me, Arden Lee. Thank you for joining me today. It's progressively getting darker outside, so I'm clearly in need of a ring light pretty soon, as Adam Lyons would say, to keep doing these videos. So I apologize for the darkness, I apologize for the glare. I just wrapped week 5 of the group call of the repatterning project, which is going amazing. I'm so proud of all my amazing participants. They're doing such incredible transformative work. So normally I would just go live a little earlier in the day, or I'd sit somewhere else, but I'm at my desk and here we are. Hi everybody, hello. I just wanted to go live and I wanted to talk about a topic for a little while. Because every once in a while I'll scroll around on Facebook and something will get kind of under my skin, and I don't want to be I don't want to be living in that place of reactivity, because the comments that I leave on other people's posts, sometimes it's it's good to it's certainly good to stand up for people. It's good to stand up for what is right. But that doesn't really make me, getting into those reactive arguments doesn't make me feel as good as just coming and talking about a topic myself. So when that happens to me, I am now choosing to take that invitation to use my own platform to create something that is better. And today's topic that I want to talk about is that being enlightened does not give you permission to speak for marginalized groups. That's it, everybody. Good chat. Let's all go home. I wish that was it. All right. I want to unpack a little bit about what I saw today. Today I saw someone who is, who has amassed a pretty impressive following, giving energetic forecasts, and being in a sort of oracle role for the collective, talk about sex work in what appeared to be a pretty derogatory way. I actually could not piece together her train of thought, even though I read the post several times. It was full of a lot of incomplete thoughts, run-on sentences, so I wasn't really quite sure what she was getting at. But I have a feeling that she said she was attacked by a sex worker. She put that in quotes. Sex worker, not attacked. Might have been better the other way around. Attacked by a sex worker, quote unquote, because her views, I suppose, were violence against sex workers or something along those lines. And I'm not sure exactly what the context of that discussion was. So I'm only going to be speaking on the trend that I see from what I did see. I'm not making any specific accusations around anyone. But I think this is something that is important to talk about. So if you're immediately starting off your post saying that you're attacked by someone who is in the group that you claim to be speaking for, that's a problem. I was attacked by a black person for talking about racism. Well, maybe your views are problematic for a reason. Who knows? Maybe that person has trauma and they're projecting onto you and they're misinterpreting something you said. But ultimately, if this is something that's coming up for you a lot, it's probably time to take a seat and listen. I am a former sex worker, as most people know. I was a pro-dom in New York. I got outed by the New York Post when the house that I was working at was busted. I continued to work underground for a little while with the clients that I already had. And then I phased out of that particular line of work. So there are some things that I feel like I really deserve to have a voice on regarding sex work, because I am someone who was literally persecuted. The house where I was working was shut down. I was not personally arrested, but my boyfriend who owned the house was arrested, and I was outed by the New York Post for raising his legal funds. I actually ended up just paying them all myself, and he now pays me back with one check every 2 months or so. My mom actually just texted this morning to say that she had received his check at my family's home address, and because I'd rather he just send it there than know where I'm at all times. and had deposited it in the bank. So I'm still dealing a decade later with the repercussions, of being persecuted for being a sex worker, even if I was not personally arrested or thrown in jail. And thankfully, my ex is paying me back. So on some level, I feel that I have a real room for a voice for sex workers, because that is persecution I have personally experienced before. And in some ways, I'm also like, you know what? I'm going to take a seat to the people who are actually doing the real frontline sex work. People who are still out there, even with SESTA and FOSTA going off, who are still engaging in practices that are legally in dispute. So I take my voice. I make sure my voice has a back seat to those people who are still engaged in the field in a way that is riskier than the way that I am engaged in it. And as you guys know, being a sex educator and being someone who is pretty outspoken, about sexuality, about kink, I've kind of changed my focus in the last couple of years. But even after I left the industry, being someone who is, educating people on BDSM, or even, doing interviews or talks, doing podcasts or whatever, talking about BDSM and being outspoken, certainly I still had, a certain amount of social stigma to deal with, without dealing necessarily with legal repercussions. So even now, I still take a back seat to people who are out there being like, yeah, no, I'm an escort, I'm in the field, and I'm doing the work, and those people are more at risk than I am. So even I'm like, listen to me to a certain extent, but listen to these people more, because they really are the ones who are affected by this. I don't want to really talk about SESTA and FOSTA and sex work today, because there are so many people out there who have said more brilliant things about it already. What I will say is that Amnesty International did a full global study and investigation into the conditions around sex work, and they found that the absolute best way, in fact, perhaps the only way to really keep sex workers safe, is full decriminalization. So I'm going with that. I'm going with Amnesty International because that's what they've said. They've really looked into it. I'm also going with what sex workers themselves have said about that, which is they seem to be in agreement with that. And anything else that you want to learn about that subject, there are other people who are already talking about it. So I wanted to sort of lay that as the foundation for this conversation, but I want to go into what I actually want to talk about, is this trend of people, because they have experienced a degree of enlightenment, a degree of opening up, a degree of sight, a degree of being able to see things for themselves, that they feel qualified to speak on behalf of marginalized groups. This is dumb. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna say it. It's rude. It's dumb. It's rude. It's counterproductive, and it's extremely egoic. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. We are in a time where our communication platforms, especially with the advent of social media, like right now I'm on Facebook Live. All I really need is a Facebook account and a mobile phone, which most people, not everybody, but most people have access to at this point. Most people have enough privilege to have those two things, if they're part of the society we live in. And I'm on here and I'm talking to you guys. And I'm speaking with authority, and I'm speaking like I know what the fuck I'm talking about, and sometimes I do. I'm sure that there will also be videos that I make where I look back in years and I'm like, wow, I was a dumbass. Why did I say that, right? I mean, like, I was a pickup artist, so, I do that already. So, we're in this time, we live in this time now, which is really lovely and beautiful for a lot of reasons, where almost everyone can have a platform. Almost everyone can have their soapbox. They can create their new coaching programs. We have the technology to be a leader, to be a thought leader, is now accessible to everyone. I'm literally, you guys, I'm running my coaching program entirely on a Facebook group. I actually went in and asked my group if they wanted to do Facebook Live or Zoom for our chats, because I actually thought maybe Zoom would be easier for them. But everyone voted, predominantly for Facebook Live. So literally, you guys, I am running a coaching program entirely on a Facebook platform. It's amazing that we live in this day and age where we have that kind of technology where we can step up, and people who are really called in their souls to be leaders can start attracting their tribes and attracting their followings with platforms that are already existing. So we don't have to go through that extra step of learning how to build that platform, how to get our videos out there, right? We have that with YouTube. We have YouTubers now. Like, all you need is a phone. All you need is literally you can start leading people right away. You can get online and you can give inspirational talks. You can get on YouTube. You can advertise your coaching business. You can run your whole platform from technology that is really easily available to us already. So that's terrific. That's really good, because it means that a lot more people are being able to step into their soul calling and their soul purpose without as much red tape in the way. So I want to emphasize that that's very positive. We're seeing a lot of people really blossom and coming into their power. And I benefit from that, because as I said, I'm running my entire coaching program right now in a private Facebook group. I'm so grateful for that platform. As problematic as Facebook is, I'm grateful for the things that allow me to do that. At the same time, there are people who amass followings who, and I don't even want to call out anyone, I don't want to call out anyone specifically. I don't even want to make this about the person who made this post about sex workers, who inspired me to give this talk. I don't want to personalize anything, because it's not my job to look at people and judge them and say what's going on with them. But what I will say is that when you have people who have easy access to platforms where they can speak with authority, and they begin to amass their following because people start listening and paying attention to them because something resonates with them, whether it's actually being helpful to them on a soul level, or whether they're just joining that community, whether they're someone who is seeking guidance so much that they are willing to give their power away to someone else who appears to be in a higher position of authority, and whether they're using their discernment about what they're hearing from that platform, from that person, or not, because both of those things can happen. You can have a really great opportunity. There's the light and the shadow side, right? We have that light side where it's like, wow, this really resonates with me. I get to tune in with this person. I get inspired. I go about my life. My life actually ends up better because of all the things that I'm learning. Versus, you also have that shadow side where you may have someone who's like, wow, this person has the answers that I don't have, and I'm going to depend on the information that they give me. I'm going to give my power away and not use my discernment. I'm just going to follow them blindly and trust in what they say, because I don't know how to make my decisions for myself. And again, no shade, you guys. I was literally like a 27 service submissive myself. I used to love giving my power away. It was like my favorite thing in the world. It was like candy. So no judgment there. It's just that these are the dynamics that come out that start happening, right? When that happens, it is naturally a temptation for a person with a platform who has a lot of people listening to them and following them to start to get into a place where they're not letting their own thoughts get checked around whether things are actually healthy or not. They're just letting things come through. And, no shade on channeling. Obviously, I love channeling myself. I love bringing in those big downloads from other places. I love bringing in that higher self wisdom. It's great. It's terrific. And sometimes I will write things and it'll be like, and I'll just throw it out there. So no shade on that. But I have to imagine that it is absolutely possible for some of our egoic ideas that are coming more from the mind, or more from the body, or more from fear-based programming, to get mistaken for higher self-truth, or for things that we feel, or things that are opinions of ours, or things that are our personal opinions. We can start to feel like, well, I'm this oracle figure now, so if I think it must be true for the entire collective. And this is simply untrue. This is simply, you're at a point where if you're doing this all the time, you know, you don't get the opportunity to do your thought laundry, right? Does that make sense? If you're doing this and you're putting yourself out there all the time and you're not going over your ideas with people who those ideas specifically affect, if you're not talking out stuff with your friends, you know. I posted like a dumbass thing the other night that was totally from a place of being triggered, and I think I mentioned it, you know, I said that it was like, I said that I was coming from that place, you know, I gave that disclaimer, but I talked to one of my friends about it, and she was like, bro, like, no, you're wrong. And I was like, you know what? Okay, you're right. I trust you. I trust your opinion. And I took the post down, and it was just like me being butthurt about a stupid thing. I thought that someone was copying off of something I did. And the friend who called me out was like, bro, a lot of people do that. It's not personal. And you actually show that you're not you're not as culturally tuned in as you think you are if you think that this is a personal thing rather than just like a kind of cultural meme or whatever. And I was like, okay, you know, so I deleted it, whatever. I didn't delete it for lack of accountability. I just deleted it because I was wrong. You know, if someone wants for me to be accountable about that, I'm fine with that. But I just, you know, it just didn't belong anywhere where it was like out there and you know, whatever, and perpetuating a belief that I happen to be wrong about or whatever. So, you know, don't slip into that trap where you think that anything that you feel is right for everybody. Because as we take on this role, and I certainly have, you guys, I've certainly taken on this Oracle archetype, and I come on and I talk about what's happening in the collective, and I talk about what's moving forward. And I always check myself, because I really want to make sure that's like, I guess that's the light side of the shadow of self-doubt or of real strenuous self-examination. Is that I check myself. I check myself a lot. I really check myself for whether what I'm saying is helpful, whether it's something that I really believe in, something that I really need to express. You know, and so far I am happy with my results and being in my integrity regarding that. Like I said, who knows? Maybe I'll look back on it one day and be like, that was a dumbass thing to say. But for now, I feel pretty good about that part. And I'm always listening. You know, when people write me and say I disagree with that, or you know, I may not agree with them right away, but I really always do my best to listen. And if I ever don't, like, just let me know. Just be like, you're not listening right now. I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna listen, and I'm gonna, you know, if you don't mind, I'm gonna take what you're saying to a couple other people, and I'm gonna ask them what they think about it too, and I'm gonna really sit with this. So, so that is something that is a standard I try to hold myself to. But if you're taking on this Oracle role in the collective, your thoughts and opinions about things, especially when they apply to other people, to other groups of people that you don't belong to, shut the fuck up. I'm sorry, but no. Stay in your wheelhouse. Stay with the things that are your wheelhouse. Stay in the things that you are good at. Even me, for right now, like I said, I've been away from most of the sex work world for a pretty long time. These things don't affect me as directly as they used to when I was a pro-dom. So even now, I step back. I listen to people like Charlotte Shane. I listen to you know, journalists like Lux Alptraum who you know, who are in that field and doing that front lines work. You know, whether it's that work or whether it's the, you know, the journalism aspect, you know, people that I can trust to actually talk to actual sex workers about their feelings and their thoughts on that. And I step back and I allow those things to inform my opinions. Not everything is, you know, not everything that you dislike or that you don't agree with is part of the Anunnaki reptilian agenda. And you don't need to come in and save the collective from themselves if they don't, you know, this is some white savior stuff. You don't even have to be white to be a white savior. You could be a non-sex work savior. You could be, you know, you could be a white knight kind of, you know, thing going on, or whatever. The point is, if you think that your opinions on the behavior of a marginalized group of people who are fighting for basic human rights is more important than what those people think about it, that's a problem. That is a big, big, big problem. And that is coming from that egoic place of feeling that you are being in that oracle role where you are giving those You are transferring those messages to the collective, and you are not doing enough of your own research to have, when we channel, you guys, like, even if we're channeling other entities, they can only work with the vocabulary and the knowledge that we already have. That's why a lot of people who are called to be channels, even if they don't understand the information that they're bringing through before they bring it through, they usually have a pretty good vocabulary or background or knowledge of different interests, because if a being is going to work with them, they need to be able to work with someone who knows the words to put the energies into while they're translating all of these thoughts, right? So if you're not read up on what those issues are, if you're not engaged, it's like if you are channeling, understanding, giving yourself that vocabulary and that background to, people think channeling is like magic, right? It's maybe it is in some ways. But if you don't have the words don't just automatically come to you from, you're not going to say a word that you've never heard or seen before when you're channeling. You may get a name, or may get something that looks interesting that, you need to then write down or whatever. But typically when you're channeling, it doesn't come through you in some other language or some, or like the words that the entity is choosing. It comes through you as an idea, and you, with your own vocabulary and your own human scope of knowledge, bring that idea through with all the tools and all the language that you have at your disposal, right? So even if this is something that you want to speak on, even if you feel that there is a message here, it's a good idea to go and, look that up and do your research first and say, well, what are sex workers saying about this? What is going on here? Because if you end up making a post that's that starts right off the bat with being butthurt about feeling like you got attacked, quote unquote, by a sex worker who is defending, in their view, their right to live and practice freely, then that's a problem. If you're not listening to the people that the things you're talking about directly affects, that's an issue. For the record, I don't have the greatest view of sex work based on my own knowledge of it, my own experience of it. I think the way that sex work functions in our society today is extremely toxic. And if I didn't know about Amnesty International's recommended plan for full decriminalization as being the thing that is going to keep sex workers the safest that they can possibly be, I would actually say, yeah, fuck yeah, let's just wipe it all out, because you motherfuckers don't deserve sex workers, because the way that this is functioning in society right now is terrible. But I understand, because of what I understand, because of what I learned, because of what I've read, the demand is never going to go away. You're never going to end demand for sex work. It is literally called the oldest profession for a reason. So it's just going to go more underground, and the more underground it goes, the more at risk sex workers are. And I understand this because I've done the research, because I understand, because I read the fucking newspaper, you guys, because I read sex workers' voices on these subjects, because I read journalists who interview sex workers, right? Melissa Gira Grant, again, Charlotte Shane, Lux Optrom, whether they have, I'm not sure about all of the, I know that Charlotte and Melissa are very transparent about their own experience. They no longer really like to dwell on the sensationalism of that. They'd rather talk about the journalistic politics of the work, and I don't blame them for that, because everyone wants to fucking sensationalize you when you're a sex worker. But I listen, like I said, I listen to the people who have that experience, or who at least asking the people who have that experience. Just because you have sight isn't everything, you guys. As my reader Kara Cambria over at Green Man says, sight is not everything. You can have really great gifts of sight, but if you're not in alignment with other, with whether it's if you're not in alignment with the full truths of the issues, then you might have a difficult time speaking on them, and you might get pushback from people who do have more of that. Bringing in downloads is not always everything. You don't always know what entities you're working with. I've heard some people talk about channeling like throwing a fish net into the ocean, and sometimes you catch an amazing fish, and sometimes you get a whole bunch of junk, right? Sometimes you may be like, I don't really have direct experience with this, because typically when I have been channeling, I've been bringing through my own higher self. I've been bringing through that own higher perspective. I have not yet, to my knowledge anyway, worked with a being who is outside of myself when bringing through that kind of language. I may work with other deities, I may call on them for my spell casting or whatever, but with channeling, I haven't done that directly. However, I have heard from other people who know better than I do that there are entities in the fields who don't have everyone's best interest at heart, and that you may be channeling someone who is, you might be channeling a demon. You might be bringing through something that doesn't really need to be brought through. You might be bringing in through a voice that is not in alignment with the best interests of the ascension of the planet. You might be bringing in something that is more harmful or what have you. So all of this is to say that just because you've stepped into this role of guiding the collective through its ascension, guiding the planet toward more enlightenment, toward better states of being, better ways of living, it doesn't mean that you're the authority on everything. And it really doesn't mean, it really, really, really doesn't mean that you have the right to speak for marginalized groups and talk about what's in their best interest when you're not one of them, because you don't have their experience and you don't have the research. And chances are, if you did have that experience and if you did do the research, you'd probably dip into your channel and you'd bring in something that was far more compassionate. Like I said, I am not hugely pro sex work, honestly, you guys. I'm absolutely pro full decriminalization, because again, I listen to those voices, I look at the research, and I understand that actually is what is safest for everyone involved. But if we're talking about my personal feelings, I have so much trauma around sex work. I'm like, yeah, the way it is right now, it sucks. Oh my God, why would I want to normalize this when so many people are being abused? I don't even just mean trafficked. I mean that there, that people don't appreciate sex workers. People don't, there is violence against them. But the answer, again, is not to abolish sex work, because Amnesty International looked into that and they said the answer is not to abolish sex work. So if you want to talk about these topics with more nuance, I welcome that. I absolutely welcome that. If you want to talk about the ways that that sex work currently is damaging to people who are in that industry, yeah, let's have those discussions, as long as you're not trying to push an agenda that actually is going to harm more sex workers in the process. Right? It's okay to have those conversations. It's okay to unpack all of that stuff. But again, you just want to watch for that egoic tendency to believe, because of your channel abilities, that you are automatically the expert on everything for everybody, and that whatever you bring through must be in the best interest of everyone in the collective, just because you're bringing it through, because you're this channel and you're this oracle and you just believe that that's true. No, check yourselves, you guys. We are on a path to enlightenment. If you were already enlightened, you'd probably be, you'd be in another dimension by now, right? We're all on the path of shedding our conditioning, shedding our clearing. And there are a lot of people who are really smart about things, people who maybe I disagree with them on one thing, or I think they're being problematic in one area, but maybe another one of their videos has been really helpful for me. Maybe I've almost even signed up for their webinar at one point, and now I'm glad they didn't, because they're, a whorephobic person. But we're not all, just because we're right about some things doesn't mean we're right about everything, and we really want to check ourselves. Don't put yourself on your own pedestal only to be knocked down, right? We do that with other leaders all the time. We do that with other figures, and we put them up on a pedestal, and then we're shocked when they're not in alignment with all their values. But everyone is on that path to enlightenment. Everyone is human, and it's important that you recognize that on your own path, even as you're opening up more and more, even as you're bringing amazing downloads through, even as you're helping the collective, do not speak for people who are not you. It's one thing to talk about the collective energies and say, hey, you may be dealing with this, you may be dealing with that. That's what's coming up for everyone. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm getting. Hope this is helpful for you. Great. We need more people in those roles. But if you're going to start speaking for groups of people that you haven't been in those groups, you haven't seen what their struggles are, you haven't empathized with them, if you're going to put their job title in fucking quotation marks like they don't even deserve a right to exist, like their work isn't even valid, then fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. I'm sorry. Just don't do this. You are in a position of authority already. You have large followings that are watching you, that are listening to you, who also have not done the research. And if they're looking to you for that authority, you guys, we just have a responsibility for the things that we are bringing through. We need to do more good rather than harm. It's at a critical juncture in the ascension of this planet. Just watch yourselves. Just watch the shit you're doing. Watch the shit you're putting out there. That's basically it, y'all. Just like don't buy into your hype so much that you allow yourself to do damage without knowing it, because you really think that you're right all the time. You can be right 99% of the time, but you're still responsible for that 1%. It's not that we aren't allowed to make mistakes. We are. I have another video. The last live I did was about what happens when you do make a mistake. I'm sure that I will make mistakes in the future. I will be grateful to the people who end up calling me in over those mistakes in a way that is kind and fosters my learning. And I'm grateful for that. So don't put yourself, please don't put yourself on that pedestal where you don't get to where you're never wrong, because at some point you're going to be wrong. At some point you're going to be wrong. In particular, in this particular example, what I want to specifically emphasize in this video is specifically make sure that you are talking to and doing your research from people who are in the groups, the marginalized groups that you are speaking about. Amplify their voices. Your opinion does not matter nearly as much as the person who is in that group, whether that person is a black person, a gay person, a sex worker, a trans person, I don't know, whatever way that intersects. Just because you're a channel, just because you're an oracle, does not mean you get to talk over marginalized people. That's really a very, very rude thing to do. Please do not do that. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Love you and appreciate you. Have a great night.